Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the party. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch today. And of course, just like the title suggested, this is going to be the how and why I got to a raw vegan plant-based diet. So in order to get there, I would like to start back at the very beginning and explain quickly, hopefully quickly, how I was raised and then how I got introduced to it. So I'm going to be sharing in a general way what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now in terms of diet. So like many people in America, I was raised pretty much on a standard American diet, although I'd like to think over the last couple of decades, the standard American diet, in my opinion, has kind of gone a little bit downhill as the amount of processed foods has gone up. For instance, I remember growing up and my parents had a bunch of gardens. We always had fresh vegetables and a lot of fruit, and gardening and just being out in nature and growing food was just part of life. We grew up, was really fortunate to grow up on a 22-acre piece of land that my father shared with his sister, my Aunt Lynn, and all my cousins. So we had quite a bit of land to, again, have gardens and fresh food. That's not to say we didn't have a lot of processed food, and of course we had quite a bit of meat. Matter of fact, meat was kind of the centerpiece of almost every meal that I can remember having. So we kind of built our meal around meat, and then a ton of dairy. I remember drinking milk pretty much for every single meal, especially for dinners. Even dinners now that I think like that's a weird thing to drink milk with, like pizza and burger. Not a typical drink that I would think you would want to have with pizza and a burger, but milk was something that we had, again, a lot of. My dad, I remember, would go grocery shopping and buy gallons and gallons and gallons of milk every single week, and I would drink a lot. As a teenager, I remember having a ton of chocolate milk. So again, this is before I think plant-based milks were really offered in the stores, but I would take like Hershey's syrup, chocolate syrup, and just dump a ridiculous amount into a big, huge glass of milk. And there were some days where I would have 2, 3, maybe even 4 big glasses of chocolate milk. And again, so that was kind of like my standard diet. Very, very centered around animal products. Never thought there was anything wrong with that. Matter of fact, grew up thinking that consuming large amounts of meat, milk, and other forms of dairy and egg were all very healthy foods. And again, they were kind of touted around, that I can remember as being very healthy. So right out of high school, I joined the military, went into the Navy, and served in the United States Navy for 8.5 years. In the Navy, I did get pretty big into working out, weightlifting, and that's where I was first introduced to the idea of nutrition in terms of dietary nutrition and working out, or gains, building muscle mass, lean muscle mass, losing fat, getting in better shape, and the idea of a diet can help with that. Of course, it was all centered around a massive amount of animal protein, particularly meat. And, the low carb thing was pretty popular. So again, that was kind of what I tried to do numerous times. I don't think I was ever very successful in terms of calculating my macros. And again, in the Navy, you pretty much get what you get. The military pays for a lot of the food, especially when you're out to sea on a submarine like I was on 6 different patrols. You get what you get. And I thought it was really a healthy, balanced diet. And in comparison to a lot of other diets, I'm sure it probably was healthier. But my transition out of the military was right into small business ownership. Matter of fact, I purchased our first company 8 months before I was able to get out of the military. So along with business ownership or entrepreneurship came an immense amount of stress. And with that, my number one way to deal with that was unhealthy eating. So I started to consume a lot more fast food, energy drinks. I was sometimes drinking 3, 4, 5 big energy drinks every single day. It was not uncommon for me to go through the drive-thru and get 2 or 3 big burger type cheap fast food. And matter of fact, the several of the people that worked at the fast food places even knew my name, my wife's name, my kids, and so that's kind of embarrassing, but that's just how often I went there. So I had built that kind of relationship. So several years into that, I was finally introduced to the documentary Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead with Joe Cross. If you haven't taken the time to watch that, I don't normally say this, but stop watching this, immediately go and watch that documentary. I didn't know this until the other day, but that's actually one of the top 10 most watched or best performing, I can't remember the term, but it's in the top 10 most influential documentaries in terms of like self-help, self-improvement ever made. And so, and not too surprising, because I've watched that more than once. And again, that's one of those that really affected me. I won't ruin the whole thing if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, but the premise is Joe goes on this journey and meets other folks and helps them along this journey, where he basically just stops eating all food and drinks juice. And he makes his own juice with fruits and vegetable, primarily green juice, vegetable juice, and that's all he does for 60 days, and he transforms his health and his body. And I thought, that's amazing. But it made sense. He talked about going back to nature, and that's something, again, because of the way I was raised, probably a lot of the things that my parents talked about growing up, it just made sense to me. It was common sense to go back to nature, to have more fruits and vegetables. That's something I think no matter what kind of diet you're on, you probably, would agree that is a good idea. So again, it wasn't till I think several months or maybe even a year after that I watched a couple other documentaries online, Cowspiracy, Forks Over Knives, eventually What the Health. But those documentaries kind of started to educate me about the truth, not only about sustainability and the planet, the animals and what happens to them and the cruelty, but my main focus, my main motivation, my main inspiration to start changing the way I ate personally was the health, the long-term health benefits of changing my diet now. And again, we watched them pretty much as a family, my mom, dad, my wife, and our kids were a little too young, but they were along for the ride whether they liked it or not. We pretty much all went plant-based almost overnight. Quick story, my wife loves to tell this part. We watched all these documentaries, got informed, got the truth about the science around food, around the long-term effects of eating animal protein versus plant-based alternatives, plant-based food, whole foods, and we made the switch. And then I think it was a day or two later, I watched another documentary, and this one was all about how animals and meat is the perfect diet. And I'm sure you can find, a documentary probably very similar to that, and it was all this bro science, and it sounded really, really good. The problem was it lacked all of the real science and all of the real credible information and knowledge that I had previously gained, but it didn't stop me from immediately swaying back and going, never mind, we're not doing this whole food plant-based, we're doing carnivore, we're doing meat, nothing but meat. And then I watched another one I'll never forget. This was the nail in the coffin for plant-based for me, was Dr. Michael Greger, How Not to Die. You can still find his talks. I think this one was at Google. I think you can still find it on YouTube for free. How Not to Die, Dr. Michael Greger. Again, if you haven't seen it, it's I think an hour and 10 minutes long. Stop watching this and immediately go watch that. It changed my life. It immediately reinforced all the other stuff that I had previously, got exposed to, and then swayed me back to whole food plant-based. And we all went whole food plant-based together. It made it so easy. We were a team. We were looking out for one another. We all started to cook. My mom primarily a lot. Her focus was on cooking whole food plant-based recipes, and she is an amazing cook even to this day, and just did an amazing job coming up with all these incredible recipes and these food, and it was actually very, very easy. Did I get a little bit? Did I catch a little hell for it? Absolutely, sure. And I quickly became the butt of a lot of vegan jokes, and I was the typical vegan. Told every single person, that I'm a vegan, and I still do that, mostly, jokingly, but also I'm proud of it. I'm proud that I no longer consume animal products, or didn't at that time. And so, real quick. Long story longer, what eventually happened was after about a year or so, I think we had pizza with real cheese, I say real cheese, with animal protein cheese, which is probably not real, but a whole lot not real than the raw vegan cheese that we make now. But that ruined me. That immediately, very addictive personality, all or none. I immediately went back to cheese and some dairy, egg, and backslid into a vegetarian. I never did again consume meat, but immediately was starting to eat foods that were not healthy at all. And again, you can be, vegan. Oreos and Coca-Cola are technically vegan. I think my sister calls it accidentally vegan, but nonetheless, that's not a very healthy diet. So vegan for the animals today, raw vegan really for health, but whole food, plant-based, raw vegan for health, and then of course vegan for the planet, vegan for the animals. But again, it's been a long journey. I think about 7 years to get where I'm at. About a year ago, I did a juice fast. A year and a half ago, I did a juice fast with my mom, 46 days. And that kind of transformed me, exposed me to this new world of raw food. I wanted to go raw when I broke my fast, but I failed to do so. I think I had a baked potato like day 1, day 2. And I was off to the races. Cooked food for me is very addictive. It's extremely comforting. It's satiating, it's satisfying. I derive a lot of comfort and pleasure out of consuming really all food, but particularly cooked food. And so it wasn't until about 6 months ago that I decided to do another longer juice fast. I didn't know how long it was going to go, but I ended up fasting just on juice for 100 days. And in the process of doing that, I watched a lot more content available online, a lot of YouTube, and I heard a guy today watching some YouTube, and he said, I didn't go vegan for some YouTube videos for some millennials that made YouTube videos. I kind of did. I kind of got persuaded, or I like to think inspired, to go raw vegan because of millennial YouTubers that shared their experience, strength, and hope, which is all I'm doing. They shared in a general way what they were like, what happened, and what they're like now, and it's compelling. It compelled me to go ahead and give this raw vegan lifestyle a try for at least the next few years, which is what I'm currently in the process of doing. I'm 6 months in. This channel is going to be dedicated to that experiment or that lifestyle change, if you will. And again, I'm only 6 months in. I feel like I'm just getting started. I've done a whole lot of things right and a whole lot of things wrong. Go ahead and mash the thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. And whether you liked it or not, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because there's going to be a lot more content that you're going to want to watch. The do's, the don'ts, my personal struggle, some of the things that I've gone through, some of the things that I'm currently going through, and how I'm doing on this new journey into raw food. So again, I'm only 6 months in. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this. Let me know in the comment section below what you would like to hear me talk about next. But again, plenty more content to come. Thank you for watching. Talk to you soon.